You are tuned into Mostly Humans. The opinions and views shared by the hosts of this podcast are uniquely their own and do not reflect the view or opinions of the companies they work for. P.S. Don't sue or fire us. Thanks so much. Now let's get into the episode.
So
I
anyway,
watched a lot of Judge Judy in my day growing up because my great-grandmother watched it. So I got well-versed in the courtroom early.
I know a lot about Judge Judy, and in a way you don't realize. I went to school with her grandkids.
That's unbelievable. How did I not know that?
Yes, super smart, who runs in the family. And I was like, okay, it all makes sense.
Right. Welcome to Mostly Humans, an AI and business podcast for everyone. We break down complex topics and the latest in AI to benefit you, the everyday person, and help showcase how these tools can impact your business operations today. I am one of your co-hosts, Justin Wright, joined by my fellow host, Matt Bigelow. Matt, how are you this week?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Oh man, doing well. It's we're recording on the weekend this time, so it's very relaxed. I'm feeling very chill. I got coffee on the side. I'm doing all right. It's a little bit rainy in Boston, but other than that, we're doing okay.
You mean you don't enjoy recording a podcast like at 6 p.m. at night when you know you have like 5 deliverables you have to get to after we record?
I actually do enjoy it, but it's then when we get to the end of it, and I'm both sad that the recording is over, and then extra sad that there's still work I need to do. But yeah, this is a little bit better.
Yes, for those who don't know, Justin and I, well, maybe I'll share this now. So now that I've officially announced on LinkedIn that I've moved into a position where I am the head of AI solutions. So Justin and I both have very similar roles. Where for those who are new listeners to the podcast here, we are both working for AI startups, and we are both the people that work predominantly with clients before they begin their journeys officially. And as I always like to say, like connect the pipes and the tubes to make sure that the technology is out there and working. Justin's been doing it a lot longer than I have, so it's been a big learning curve for me. But thanks to working with you, Justin, and thanks to this podcast, frankly, I felt comfortable to step into this role and step out of just a purely sales leadership role and into the implementation side. But I must say, yes, heavy looms the deadline. I'm really starting to understand the world that you're operating in. In fact, even though we are recording here on the weekend, I might be working on some stuff right after this until kickoff.
Yeah, sadly, that's unavoidable sometimes. But it's an exciting position to be in. But yes, it's high pressure, as they say. But now that you are implementing and playing around with tools, I know we were thinking about kind of highlighting some quick tips and tricks, or maybe strategical things that you've uncovered as you're playing around with these tools. Any fun AI tips for our viewers that you've come across this week?
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that this is something that everyone hasn't heard before, but I still just find that this is a podcast for the everyday person, right? And I think that a lot of people are still not using the basic tools as efficiently as they can. So I'm actually going to pull up in my ChatGPT instance right now. As is always the case, I don't know what's a paid feature and what's not for everybody. I'm using a paid feature, but if you click into your ChatGPT, folks, especially if you're listening at a computer, and you just click on your little icon where your name is, bottom left of your computer, and then click on settings. There's a super, super valuable thing called connectors. It's the 4th one down. I'm just looking at it as I'm going. And I personally haven't even encountered not even a single person that I know that is using connectors yet. And what do connectors do? It's kind of like agents. For those who have followed our agent episode, it's semi-agentic work. Agents is when LLMs start to not just use their pre-training, but also use tools, third-party tools. That's exactly what you're seeing here. And a lot of them are connected through other episode we ran. Watch it if you haven't, called MCT. But some of the ones that I think that would be super valuable to the everyday person is Google Drive, Outlook Calendar, Teams, SharePoint, Google Contacts, Dropbox, Gmail, Canva, HubSpot, Google Drive. Think about you all out there. When you first started playing with these tools, you asked it to write a poem, tell you a joke, asked it about some news event just to see like what did it know. And it said, oh, my training's only up till 2021. And you started to like test the boundaries of how LLMs work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you said like, what's on my calendar today, right? Or what's our pricing model? And the LLM was like, I don't know. What do you sell?
Yeah.
And then this is like, 2-3 years ago. And then you'd be like, oh, I sell XYZ marketing software. And it would go pull up pricing from several years ago because its training only went up to 2021. Like, and then that's kind of how we all learned and tested. What can this thing do? Let us be the first to tell you if you are not aware. Inside of the ChatGPT that you have right now, you can connect it to the stuff that is contextual to you, to your company, to your Gmail. Start to think about the possibilities. So my tip or trick is get in there and try it, folks. Like a buddy of mine recently was like, hey, like if you could just help me figure out how to work with my system through an LLM, the system that he was talking about. And I was like, that's in the connector. You gotta connect it right now. So yeah, that's mine for everybody. If you haven't tried that, try it. It's going to start to blow your mind. And this is the future. This is where we're going. We're going to be able to conversate with data about ourselves.
Yeah, it's a really good segue into this week's topic, which is kind of the tactical edition of the future of work. So in the last episode, we talked about kind of high level our thoughts on where things are going, how you can embrace it and align yourself with these AI tools as they continue to develop. One other interesting thing about OpenAI specifically is they actually just this last week announced that they acquired StatSig, and the CEO of StatSig, or former CEO Vijay Raji, is actually going to now be the CTO of applications for them. So I would imagine that a lot of these connectors and capabilities are just going to continue to expand. So if you get comfortable with them now and you start playing around with stuff as Matt suggested, as they continue to roll out even more of these, I think you'll be in a good position to have a good understanding of what they do and how they can help your workflows.
Okay. Thank you for saying that, because vulnerable, we like to keep it real as we always do. I'm never going to sit here and act like I know things I don't. I was like, oh, huge acquisition. Good for them. And I clicked StatSig in LinkedIn and I looked at their description, like their like 2-sentence byline about what they do. And I was like, I don't get it, but I'm sure it's strategic. So now I know.
Yeah. So he's now the CTO of applications specifically. So, I still don't think that, who knows? I mean, OpenAI traditionally, as Matt knows, that they haven't wanted to go too deep in the applications world because as long as people are using their LLM, they make money anyways. But now they've spun up this consulting, business consulting wing, and they have the CTO of applications now. So I'm sure they're going to try to expand those connections and at least give more base offerings for users. And then, the advanced stuff, there'll still be third-party vendors or hopefully there will be the people who keep Matt and I employed to build, more specific workflows, but we will see.
Hey, before we get into the future of work on Tactical Edition, and if you guys haven't listened to the first episode on this, which was last week's, it's just two people who work in the AI field who care just as much about the future of humanity and society and their own employment as you all do. And, we can't predict the future, but we just talked at a philosophical level about like how the glass is kind of half full the way we see it. And today we'll get into tactics. Before we do, I have a funny life story for you.
Love this. Can't wait.
Totally true, by the way. Where I live, the infrastructure, it was all like farmland around here. And my community was one of the first ones to be built on some farmland. And now there's just everything's getting built up in this area. And the infrastructure is really, really bad to get out of here, like to get out of my neighborhood and to get to any place. So the other morning, I was at this stop sign that backs up for like a quarter mile now. And where you're trying to make a right-hand turn, which is how I get to the gym each morning. When you're going right at a stop sign or right on red, it's not as bad as making the left-hand turn, but it's really trafficy in there and it's hard to see around the car to the left. So I'm inching out, just trying to see if I can go. And the car behind me cannot tell that there's a lot of cross traffic coming. And the guy's just laying on the horn behind me. Just laying on the horn. And I was like, wow, I live
he
in
must
the
be
South
from
now.
Boston. Yeah, he must be from Boston.
Exactly. I was like, I live in the South now. This never happens like down here. It used to happen all the time when I was in New Jersey. And I'm getting frustrated because I'm like, oh, would you like me to pull into an accident? Apparently that's what I should be doing. So anyway, I eventually make the right-hand turn when it's safe, and then he follows me. And as I'm looking in my mirror because I'm frustrated with him, right? Like I got my anger going a little bit, and I'm like, "Usa, like got to be relaxed." And so I get a good look at the car and the person behind me through my rearview mirror, and he gives me the universal signal of disrespect with his hand. I'll let you determine what that is. And pretty aggressively, it lets it hang out the window as he makes a left turn, and I continue on straight. So as I'm driving down the street, I was like, you know what? I could ruminate on this for, the next 5 minutes and have it ruin my morning. Or I could just let it go. Like, who cares? So I didn't let it go immediately, but 30 seconds later, it was out of my mind, which I'm an evolving human, people. I'm still very flawed, right? Get this. A week goes by, and this very recently, this happened a couple days ago. I am pulling out of my street to get onto that busy road that's backed up, and it's already backed up a quarter mile, and I need to make a left-hand turn, right? So as I'm approaching the stop sign before the really bad one, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be stuck here forever, right? So as I pull up, somebody rolls down their window and gives me ushers me in. Like, I'm going to let you in and be the nice person to let you in, and cut like half the line. It was the same guy. Same guy. Definitely did not remember me. I remembered him because he made me angry. But why I wanted to share that, Mostly Humans podcast, right? I think it's important to remember, like, I think I probably never would have thought about that guy again, but I probably made a whole bunch of assumptions about him being a lousy guy.
Yeah.
and not
he
a
let you
kind
in?
person.
Oh.
And here we are. Same guy is the one. It was the same, like, it's the same, like, dent in the bumper. It was 100% the same person, and he's the one who was kind and let me in. So you know what? Like, if you're stuck in traffic, everybody, or if you have like a rough meeting with someone, a rough encounter with someone in public, remember, they are mostly human. You are mostly human, and we all have good moments and bad moments. But I was like, wow, what a full circle moment. Same guy. I would have, he could have made my day or ruined my day. So I thought I'd share that one because that was absolutely mind blowing to me.
That is interesting. If anybody hasn't determined from, I think, really the last 2 episodes that I'm a deeply philosophical human, and I ruminate on many of these things. I think about this a lot where, a lot of times if you encounter somebody and you're like, oh, that person's really a jerk, you don't have the context of why they were in that situation. Like, maybe that guy was rushing to the hospital or something. Like, you never know what was going on that day. And so I do think it's important to put those interactions in perspective and try not to just assume people are jerks, because, everybody's got motivations for doing whatever they have to do, which is, that's a good story. I like that. I'm kind of immune to traffic anger being in Boston now. I'm just so used to it. Like, where I live in the Dorchester, for anybody who knows anything about Boston, which is, it's driving here is like driving in a war zone. There are no traffic rules. It's just people do whatever they want. It is chaos at all times. And I'm so immune to it. And when people visit, like when my in-laws visit or I'm driving my mom around, she's blown away. But she's like, did you see that person that just did a 3-point turn in the middle of the street? It's like, yeah, it's Wednesday. Like, I don't, it's just another day. I don't know what you want me to do. So, yes, the drivers it's always interesting. I know we wanted to dig into this week some like tactical workflows and things that we actually use on a regular basis. And, I think the connections in ChatGPT and enabling it to actually interact with your data is such a huge one, and that I think was worth kicking off with. But in terms of like, handing it back to you, maybe what is another workflow or tactical thing that you use when you're interacting with AI tools, especially if we're looking at general stuff like ChatGPT or Claude or things that maybe our listeners are at least hopefully dipping their toe in the water with now?
Well, I'm actually going to start off by saying, before we get into the tools, as we discussed, like, how can we all evolve to stay really relevant and ensure continued career progression in AI? The first thing that I would suggest is like, for the longest time, we as humans have said, but someone's like, what do you do for your job? You like give them the job description, or not the job description, the job title, right? And then someone says, well, what do you do? Especially like little kids always ask like parents and adults, like, what do you do for your job? Oh, like I type stuff into a spreadsheet. I do this, I do that, right? Salespeople, what do you do? Oh, I call clients. I create proposals. I create decks. I email people. I do this, that, and the other thing. But the real thing that they're supposed to do is generate revenue for a company. That's the outcome. The outcome is generate revenue. Marketers, how would they describe what they do? I create blog posts. I create websites. I write talk tracks for intros to podcasts. I do copy for this, everything. What are they supposed to do? Generate pipeline is the outcome, right? Accountants, what does an accountant actually try to do? An accountant, the outcome that they're trying to drive for most of their clients is be compliant with the government and maximize their returns. But an accountant would be like, I review this, I review that. Lawyer, what do? I read all this stuff. I read precedent. I'm trying to keep my client out of jail. Right?
Important.
Or get
Very
justice
important.
for my client if they're the plaintiff, right? Plaintiff, defendant. Yeah, I got that right. That one always in my head. It's always risky.
You got to watch more. You got to watch more like Law and Order or any other crime drama.
Plaintiff, person who bringing lawsuit.
Yes, there you go.
So
I
anyway,
watched a lot of Judge Judy in my day growing up because my great grandmother watched it, so I got well versed in the courtroom early.
I know a lot about Judge Judy, and in a way you don't realize. I went to school with her grandkids.
That's unbelievable. How did I not know that?
Yes. I haven't spoke to them in a long time. If they happen to hear this, I won't name names, but they're great kids, super smart, who runs in the family. And they were very, very, very smart. And I was like, okay, it all makes sense.
Yep. There you go.
Anyhow, why am I focusing on outcomes? All of AI is moving to like outcomes-based pricing and all that kind of stuff, right? If you want to stay relevant in your job, you need to start saying to yourself, not what have I done traditionally? What is all the busy work that kept me busy forever? Any of you, ask yourself, what are the things that you always describe? If a child asked you, what do you do all day? You would describe the inputs. But if they said, well, why do you do all those things? Because kids love to say why. It's actually because of the output or the outcome. What we all need to do, yours truly included, is say, what is the outcome that they actually want from me? And do I need to do all this busy stuff still to get to the outcome? And introduce this massively smart tool. So Allie Miller, who's my favorite follow on all things AI, she actually posted a video about this. Yeah, she's incredibly talented. She's very relatable. And she said, you should actually print out your job description and cross out all the inputs part of the job description for the job you actually got hired for, when you got hired for, and just highlight literally with like a magic marker or a highlighter, what is the outcome? And then go start playing with large language models and figure out how much of all that input stuff can you cut out. Right. So that's my first thing that I would like to share with the audience is heed her advice in that way. Because maybe you don't have to type in all this stuff. Maybe you don't have to read this stuff. You have deep research at your disposal. If you're a lawyer, you have discovery information. If you have a secure tool, you could load all of that in and then start asking questions of all the things that you loaded in instead of having to read all the discovery information and start to get closer to the outcome. So if y'all are still still putting a lot of your worth or what you do at your job or how you feel productive for that day on the inputs, those are largely going to get automated away and you are in danger. But if you start asking yourself, what is the reason behind why I used to do all this busy work and what are we trying to actually do? And then just go start seeing how do LLMs fit into that for you? then you're already on the right track. You are now a more efficient worker.
Yeah, I like that a lot. High level, I think the way to think about it that is very related to what you just said is a lot of people wish that they could have a personal assistant, right? You're like, oh, my boss has an EA and they're amazing and they, take care of all this stuff. AI can be your personal assistant. And if you think about what are the things that I would want to start to offload, what are the things that I would have this person do if I had them? I mean, if we think back to like Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek and how it kicked off all this crazy, oh, you can automate all this stuff, you can outsource a bunch of stuff. And the model there was basically offshoring and using essentially like personal assistant, fractional assistant companies to offload some of this stuff. You don't even need to go that route anymore. You can do all that through LLMs. And so starting to think about, okay, if I were to automate this, if I wanted to, follow the 4-Hour Workweek playbook, all of those processes now are infinitely easier with these AI tools. So whether you're applying it to your current role or you're applying it to your, a side project or a startup idea that you have or whatever, you can do it that way. One of the things I like that you mentioned was deep research, because that's actually one of the examples that I use a lot. And I use it. So for those who haven't used it, in ChatGPT, and a lot of the other providers have this now as well, but in ChatGPT, you have the ability to toggle on deep research, which essentially you'll give it a prompt. I actually use it for like stock portfolio analysis, for like reading analyst reports or whatever. But if you give it a topic, you say, hey, I want you to look at recent, analyst reports of all this stuff and give me the data. It'll give you then follow-up questions. It's usually like 4 or 5 follow-up questions so that it can even get more specific. And it'll be like, oh, do you want like a deep research report? Do you want it to be casual? Do you want me to look at international or just domestic? It'll ask you a bunch of follow-up questions, and then it just runs in the background for however long it takes. The beauty of deep research is that it'll cite all of its sources. It's going to basically create like a reference report or a deep analytics report with links out to everywhere that it pulled information from. So you can click and verify, you can look through it. I made one for my buddy who was considering pivoting to a completely different industry, but he had certain skills. And so I did a deep research report on how his skills could be applicable to that new industry to kind of get him up to speed and use it as a primer for his interviews. So I was like, hey, take this, read it. This will help you prep for these interviews, and it'll help you understand how your current skill set actually relates to this new field that you're considering going into. And then the thing that I also tend to do is once I have that deep research report, we talked last week a little bit and in previous weeks how when you use a prompt on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, you can upload files and it will use those files as context. So I will then upload my deep research report and I will ask questions using the LLM's general knowledge, but grounded in the research itself to give me more nuanced answers, to help brainstorm ideas, and then to kind of do all these other workflows that we've been talking about with LLMs. But I'm attaching that deep research as a source of information to kind of keep the conversation going.
So cool. What I like about what you're saying, especially for our listeners, is like deep research is basically consulting, right? This is what consultants have done forever. And they, we pay 6, 7, 8 figures for consultants to do a massive amount of research on a thing because we're too busy doing this thing. But we know we need good information. We want to make an educated decision. So they are either domain experts or they're not. But either way, they do a massive amount of research. They synthesize the findings. They give it to you in like, if you're a business, somewhere between like an 8 and 50 page PowerPoint with recommendations and stuff. And then they try to sell you more consulting. I'm not here to say consulting's gone. I'm just saying like, this is a perfect example. What I just said earlier and what Justin just said, let's synthesize them. I said, don't think about, how AI can do the work you do all day, the way you spend your 40 hours. Think about, why did your company ask you to do those 40 hours of work in the first place? What's the end result? And then start to augment it. And then what Justin has just highlighted for us as well is that you now have like Boston Consulting Group in your back pocket for lack of a better example, don't get offended, anyone who works there. You guys are extremely talented. But you effectively have something like that, for lack of a better analogy, in your back pocket. You never did before. So if your boss asks you to go execute anything for any role that you have, in the past, you would always say, well, of course, I can't go spend $250,000 on a PowerPoint from Boston Consulting Group. So I'm going to do a little bit of my own research and try to do the best thing I can for my job. Now you have the power of, let's call it if they are tier A, best possible consulting group, you have like a D tier consultant in your back pocket. Use it or don't at your own peril, right? If your boss asks you for a pricing suggestion or a package name suggestion or a new way to onboard a customer or whatever it might be, and you choose to not use the fact that you have a consultant that can do deep research as you come up with your own recommendations, that's at your own peril, right? But if you do, you are now incredibly valuable. And that's what this episode is all about. So the first 2 points, just to recap for everyone that we said: one, figure out why were you doing the busy work? What's the end result that they're looking for? Try to augment with LLMs. And two, make sure that you're using research, deep research, as you make recommendations or as you are trying to think through ideas. You'll be very, very surprised what's on the other side.
Yeah. And to take it a step further with that example of, okay, your boss at work asked you to, it's like, hey, we need deep market research on this industry, and we're going to create a presentation to pitch to the board or to this other vendor or whatever. If you think about the spread of time that you would spend historically, that research portion takes a really long time. And then that may cause you to ultimately have to rush to deliver that presentation, or you have to work on a Saturday to get it done for a Monday or something. And it's kind of a high stress situation. I don't know anything about that. But if you think about now how the time breakdown works, okay, you use deep research to do that market analysis for you. You then upload that deep research report to ChatGPT. You start asking questions about it. You start brainstorming about, okay, how could I leverage this point that is in this paragraph about this aspect of the industry? Hey, tell me a little bit more about this point here where it's, it's looking at profitability over time or whatever it is. And now you can actually go back and forth, have a conversation just as if you hired a consulting group, because you have that report as context. And now you may be able to spend 5 days instead of 2 really creating a compelling deck and actually using the information in a constructive way, being able to think about it, being able to take your time doing that portion the right way. And to this original point that Matt made, the impact is in that end product that leads to the outcome. And all of the other stuff is just the necessary inputs that used to take a lot of time and now take far less time.
100%. Couple examples that I want to highlight for just to help people start to think through some of these points that I was making, right? So if you're a project manager or you work in ops, right, you spend time making like Gantt charts and scrumming a project and sending status updates to all these people and all that kind of stuff. But as you start to think about agents, you might start to think to yourself, if you're in ops or project management, like, oh no, my job is going away. That because even though no matter how many times I say on this podcast, I know it's not going to fully sink in for people. Everything I just said, sending status updates, scrumming a project, roles, responsibilities, building Gantt charts, all that kind of stuff. Those are inputs. What is the output of what a project manager is supposed to do? Successfully get a project done on time and on budget. That's the output. Those other things used to be inputs. Some of those project managers still may do for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm not a project manager, trust me. I'm not a good ops person. But I am suggesting that if you're a project manager, it is now your job to figure out what parts of that can be done with agents or LLMs if you want to be hyper employable and stay in project management, right? Think about customer support. So Justin's company focuses on customer support. My company focuses on internal support, internal operations, back office operations, HR, IT, stuff like that. Customer support, like if you ask them, hey, what do you do all day, right? If the child asks them, what do you do all day? I look at questions that people send in, and I go to a knowledge base and I look up the answers, And then I try to use my reasoning to apply, is this an edge case? What's the best thing to do? I determine whether or not I'm qualified to do this. And then I might hand it off to someone who has a different domain expertise or a different one or a different one. And if it's software, then it ends at an engineer, all that kind of stuff. Inputs, 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 inputs. What's the output? A customer support agent is supposed to give a customer a delightful experience and get them through friction as fast as humanly possible. Reverse engineer, if Justin's company sells agents that can answer a lot of, well, not a lot, all of the basic questions and do agentic stuff, like look up account details or take an action in the system or whatever, start to ask yourself, how could I deliver a delightful experience to a customer? If a customer is reaching out with a question or an issue, they're still like, just put a checkbox in the negative for your company, right? Like, I might have a great interaction with my cable provider. And I think, oh,
that never happens
until you guys come along. But like, I might have a great, but I'm still, that person was lovely. They helped me so much. They were so kind, but I'm still annoyed that I had to waste any part of my day because something's broken with my cable experience or my bill. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So like as a support agent, I can start to think to myself, and most of your colleagues won't do this, but you can be the valuable one that stays on. How can I enhance the experience? What can we be proactive about that they're actually reaching out with all the time anyway? You know what I mean? Another example that I have is like, think about, we're seeing a lot, we haven't barely touched on this here, but these droids, these bots, whatever you were going to call them, robots that are AI powered, or really the development there is kind of crazy. Right. And think about like if you're someone that works at a hotel and you are the person who typically tidies up the room, for example. And like 5 years, I could easily see like a Tesla bot making a bed and doing like deep cleaning, the kind of stuff that some people avoid, like literally like moving furniture and dusting underneath it and stuff, like not just a surface level clean. So you're going to get better clean. Why are you cleaning it in general? That's an input. So that someone can come and feel like it's a home away from home and have a good experience and want to stay at your hotel next time and spend more money. So if you're like in the housekeeping line of work, you can start to think to yourself, what are the personal touches that I could do to make it so someone wants to feel like it's a home away from home, wants to come back, wants to spend more money, right? It wasn't just that you changed the sheet that made them want to come in and spend more money or come back next time, right? That's not the thing. That's the input. That's just a necessary thing. So if a droid or a bot is going to do that type of thing for us, what can we do from a customer service standpoint? What would make you feel amazing, right? Maybe it's greeting them and just getting to asking them a couple questions as they ride the elevator up and learning a little bit about them. And then they don't even think that there was anything other than a conversation. And then something you learned, you give them a deliverable for that, or you recommend something for that, or you bring them like something that would be interesting based off of something that they told you they were in town to do. So I just wanted to highlight just some practical examples for different occupations as well about what is the difference between an input and an output. And when you're not so busy focused on inputs, maybe you could free yourself up to actually think creatively about the outputs. I'm not suggesting that for project managers, for housekeepers, for salespeople like me or anyone else, that we can all do this and all maintain our jobs. We can't. I don't believe that to be true. But a select few who choose to listen to this podcast. So if you want to continue to be relevant, you should be the one who pivots to ask, how can I focus on outputs and stop getting caught up and feeling insecure about my inputs being automated away.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love if we could have a high future employment rate for Mostly Humans listeners. That's a good podcast goal. I think that's great. If we can get there, then I think we've done our jobs. I really like these examples. I think to take it a step back to one very simple thing that I find myself doing a lot is we're talking about how LLMs can, and you've heard, they can get rid of this monotony or this rote, boring work or whatever. And we say, yeah, we can do all these things. But in terms of one very, very practical way that you can do this, how many times have you had to, at your job, especially if you work in tech or really anything software adjacent, you have to take some information from this document or this website, and it has to end up in a spreadsheet for someone somewhere. And in years past, okay, I'm doing a lot of copy pasting. I'm formatting my Excel file with, different column names, etc. Maybe I know some basic Excel formulas or even some advanced Excel formulas, right? AI is actually very good at creating spreadsheets. And so I find myself using it a lot to take data from this place and put it into another format, which is often like a spreadsheet or a CSV file, or maybe because I'm working with a lot of product and engineering teams at the companies we're talking to, a lot of times they'll send me a bunch of JSON, which is basically just structured computer data, and I need to put that somewhere so that we can do other things with it. And before, in years past, that takes a lot of copy pasting. It takes a lot of double checking to make sure that you didn't make a mistake and you accidentally added an extra letter here when you pasted it over or whatever, which, happens all the time. But now, one of the things I most commonly use ChatGPT for is, hey, take this data, put it in a spreadsheet. Here's what I need the column names to be. Here's what the rows are going to be. Maybe do this formula and set up a separate thing. And so it allows me to move through that type of data analysis or data transformation work so much faster. And now, instead of spending, an hour and a half double checking my work, copy pasting, I throw it in. It takes like 5 minutes. I look at it, make sure that things are good. And if it isn't perfect, as Matt consistently says, I type in the box why it isn't perfect and give it another run and let it do its thing again. It usually takes a couple iterations. But point being, all in, you're spending like 15 minutes versus 90. And that extra time now allows me to actually use the data for the next step of the process, which tends to be more complicated.
I love that. That kind of triggers for me the next point that I want to make about very tactical advice. So the next tactical advice, you're going to look at me sideways, a lot of people. And trust me, it's real and it's already here. And that is, start doing other departments' jobs. Oh, what a controversial take. But because you can now. So for example, what Justin was just describing, 5 years ago, I've been working in software my whole life. I literally would have had to lean on someone technical. I would have even had to ask around, because I wouldn't even know what department for sure would do that. Maybe like a business systems team, or maybe we have a data or ML team. I might have asked for work like that. You don't need to ask anybody to do that anymore if you're just willing to type into the box a couple times. What are some other things that you don't need to do anymore that I've actually done in my life? I have built websites and interactive SaaS applications that are not high level, not highbrow, because I needed them as a sales team. So at my last job, we knew that we had a pretty intense way of selling our product from a pricing model that people were not familiar with, because it's not traditional seats. And I thought to myself, I'm still caught up on a little bit of the old way of doing work. Maybe I should reach out to the engineering team and see if they're willing to stop doing what they're doing and build an interactive thing with where you can click and drag and with numbers with the clients, and the clients can input some numbers, and we can press a button and we can synthesize what the pricing should be and what the projected ROI might be and all this kinds of stuff. And do that by industry and do it based off of industry research. I was like, gosh, that's building a whole new product. And what would have happened is I would have thought about it. I would have thought better than to even ask, because I know they would tell me to take a hike, fly a kite, or something more Jersey. And and it wouldn't happen. My last company, I just vibe coded that. I typed into the box on Base 44 what I wanted. And then all of a sudden, we had what looked like a SaaS application website that was super interactive, that salespeople, the outcome is to make more sales, right? So if I can communicate the value of pricing better and make it interactive, and all I had to do was drag in company logos and stuff, and the AI made it look like it was something our engineering team built. And all of our sellers, I trained them up on how they can go in, they can type numbers in front of the client while sharing their screen. They could toggle features on or off. They could change the dates, this, that, and the other thing. And the whole thing was interactive, and it was on brand, and it looked really cutting edge and high tech. That's kind of like a marketer's job. That's kind of like a business systems person's job and an engineer's job, and a big strategic thing for a company to do. I was just a director of sales at that company. That's it. Not my job to do that. I'm swerving into other people's lanes to do what I need to do. A lot of customer success managers listen to this podcast. I know that for a fact. So they're the people who try to give companies value with their company's software, right? And they think that they're kind of bound by what the product they sell is and the customer success software that they have and the email tool that they have. And it's just not that way. Ask your client very directly, like, what would it take for you to get more value from us to where we could assure that if 6 months from now we ask you if you want to renew, if you're going to renew, they'll tell you. Ask your customers for hard feedback instead of pretending everything's all good, and they'll tell you what's wrong and how you can get there. And you can probably use generative AI to come up with solutions for a lot of the things that they don't like. Like, for example, we had a funny episode where you said, like, that button will never be there. Sorry about it. That's been the world of SaaS forever. I'm not saying that a customer success manager can go change their company's core product, but think differently. What is the outcome? Why does your client want that button there? Oh, for this reason and that reason. Okay, well, could you export the data from your company's core product that you can't change as a CSM? And could you vibe code a little thing for your customer that you tell the AI exactly why they want it, where the data is coming from, what it's going to do, so they can click and drag it and press boom and it does a thing. And now that customer is getting value. Then maybe if enough customers find that useful as well, you could talk to your team and they'll roll it into the core product. But now as a CSM, I've swerved into product management land and engineering land. And why can I do that? Because the AI knows all the general information that every PM has ever been willing to type into the internet and every engineer has been willing to type into the internet. We all have access to a shared super intelligent brain that knows a bunch of stuff. And you can talk to it and it can do things for you. So start swerving outside of your department to get to the outcome. I have done this so many times, and a bunch of different examples I could share with our listeners. And every time I do it, I'm surprised how everybody else is surprised that someone did that. And it makes me look like I'm a innovative person at work. And I don't think it's that hard because I literally just type into a box.
Yeah. I promise we don't talk about what we're going to say before these. And I'm so happy that you just used that example, because some of the other examples that I have are, I'd call them two-phase approaches. The first phase, I think, is more accessible to a broader audience, like you were just talking about, a CSM, maybe trying to prototype something. And then I'll talk a little bit about how I think, if you are working in product now, or you're working alongside engineering teams and maybe you're not as technical, how you can actually bridge that gap. But the first thing I would say is it's actually very easy to prototype ideas now. And this is really important, because if you're an aspiring product manager, or if you are just getting customer feedback, you know how hard it is sometimes to get a feature added to the roadmap at your company, especially if it's a larger company and roadmap is planned out for a long time, and you have a customer who, is asking about this feature. There's a thing that's a pain for them, and you really want to try to help solve their problem, but it's going to be difficult to convince people in product and engineering to actually add this feature. Using Base 44, using Lovable, even using ChatGPT, or now Google has the Nano Banana image generation or whatever. You can even use image generation to create a mock-up of this feature or this new button and where it would go and what it would look like. And the phase 2 is like Figma has MCP now, so you can actually create full Figma mockups just by typing into a box, because it's connected to all the tools required to do that stuff. And so, if you listen to our MCP episode and you want to start to dabble, there's a bunch of guides online of how to actually connect to an MCP server, and you can look up Figmas if this stuff is really interesting to you and you want to dig deep. And you can also message us or comment on the podcast, and I can help. Matt can help a little bit. We're happy to kind of guide people. But now
Matt can help too. Yeah.
Hey, we're working in similar roles now.
Yeah.
But point being, the tools exist where you can actually create a prototype. If you go down the MCP Figma rabbit hole, the capability exists to now allow you to create a fully clickable demo walkthrough of your prototype. And now you have a much more compelling case when you bring both the data from the customer, a write-up of your idea, which can be AI generated, and now this prototype, whether it's an image or a full-fledged Figma clickable experience, you can now bring that to product and say, hey, I've been speaking to my customers. A lot of them want this feature. I've mocked up a prototype of what this feature could look like in our product, and I think it would provide immense value. It would probably cause these customers to upsell, which again, if we're talking about outcomes, you're now bringing in more revenue for the company. You're retaining customers. And now that they can see it and they have more information, you've saved them a lot of this work that maybe they didn't want to do before. But now they're like, oh, that actually is a good idea. Now that we can see this experience and see what it looks like and actually, understand this feature request, we can roll this in to the next development cycle or whatever. And so now you can prototype and present ideas and have that whole process happen a lot faster using AI tools.
And for those who don't know, I'm starting to notice a trend here, by the way. It's like Matt knows a little bit about technology, Justin knows more. Matt knows a little bit about fitness, but Justin knows a lot more about fitness. Well, here's another one of things where Justin edges me out. He's just a more capable human. We both have a video production background, but he knows a lot more about video production. Like my video production, I've spent a ton of time editing videos and stuff of me and my friends doing aggressive rollerblading and things like that in the past, and in a B2B context. But Justin literally worked on actual sets with microphones and real humans and lighting and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that he and I both know and can both appreciate, and trust me, everyone, this ties into how you can stay relevant, is how hard it is to for example, I always turn to my wife when we're watching Netflix or something. If there's a single shot scene that's more than 5 minutes, where they're following the actor as they're walking through the conference room, or oftentimes movies have someone walking through the back house of a kitchen, and people are doing stuff in the kitchen, and they walk into the front of house and they're interacting with people. I think there's a famous scene in Goodfellas where they do that. Mm-hmm. And I'm always turning to my wife. I'm like, you have no idea, typical editing, it's 2 seconds here, cut to another clip here, you stitch them all together, it looks like a natural conversation. These one take shots are so hard to do because everyone needs to be ready to do it to make it look natural. So Justin and I know what goes into even editing a 5-minute conversation or filming a 5-minute conversation between two characters, keeping it spicy, keeping it moving along, medium shots, close-ups, whatever. Gosh, video production is just a nightmare, or it was. And the things that all of us as consumers who have no background in this don't appreciate is that a 30-minute episode of your favorite reality show, the reason they filmed it 6 months earlier is because it takes forever to edit that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And your average person who doesn't spend time in video production doesn't know all that goes into it like you and I do. But they definitely know they wouldn't even know how to start. So let's say you are a customer success manager, for example. And your company has release notes and you automatically spam your clients and hey, here's everything in the release notes. And it's a newsletter email, and they already oversubscribe to newsletters, so they don't read it. And they don't get value. As a customer success manager, you're probably thinking to yourself, hey, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000,000. Imagine if the 10 little quality of life features we just rolled out and put in that newsletter that no one reads, imagine if they were a really awesome video, animated 3D video of how the feature works and how to do it, all that kind of stuff. That'd be cool. And they move on with their life because I have to talk to someone in marketing and they have to commission a 3D graphic designer and do the editing. Well, not anymore, right? Not anymore. Start to ask yourself, everybody, what parts of society were always super, super time consuming? Development, video production, image generation, deck creation, coding of websites that are no longer, that you've heard through this podcast and other forms of media, are no longer time and cost prohibitive anymore. And ask yourself, could you do that? And video is a gigantic one for every job. Mm-hmm. My financial advisor, he's amazing. And I'm sure he doesn't do a lot of video production about success stories with his clients or how he helped us navigate the COVID pandemic and helped his clients get through that and all that kind of stuff. He could go into a text box right now and type in the story he wants to tell and some of the great outputs that he got because he did this or this for his clients, or how he helped these people get from here when they were kind of like in debt to a healthy retirement, and create a video and then send that to all of his clients. He has all their email address. Guys, think about video alone. Video is one of the easiest ways to communicate ideas, to help people form opinions, to sell things, to push initiatives. That is an amazing way that all of us in our roles can figure out how, and you can generate this stuff now with Sora or anything else. Just type into the box the video that you want to see.
Mhm.
And like, you're like, oh, well, it's going to create some non-accurate version of my product if I'm a CSM. So that's not useful. It could be. Take screenshots of your product and paste those into the box and say, this is exactly what it looks like and everything. My goodness, like the video world alone, video can apply to plumbing. It can apply to home design, pavers. It can apply to cars, software, healthcare, finance. Like the fact that most of us aren't even considering how we are a director, a 3D graphic designer, a producer, and editor all in one, and not using that for our jobs alone is a detriment to all of us because the tech is here. So that's another example of how you could stay relevant. Start using video in this unique way that most people are not thinking about using it.
Yeah, that reminds me of Kalshi. It's like a future market prediction betting app. Basically, they've done all of their recent advertisements with AI video, and they're completely insane and just like these crazy scenarios. But they got a ton of traction and went incredibly viral because the person in charge of that marketing effort leveraged these tools to basically create videos that look like, or commercials that look like they have a budget that they couldn't afford at the time. And so they were able to get super creative and actually depict things that would be very hard to do on set in real life and very cost prohibitive. I think in terms of, that's such a good example of video content, or even like how many people have thought it would be really helpful to have a how-to video library for our product. But, in order to create that, to Matt's point, I got to go to marketing. We have to set aside budget that we don't have. Our customers are regularly confused about how to use this one feature. And even though we have a good Help Center article on it, it would be much better if we could visually show them with some, animated video or whatever. And if you're worried about it not looking like your product, again, as Matt mentioned, upload screenshots, but you can also have it be an animation versus a realistic video. So with these AI tools, you can specify which type of video you're looking for. I think, we've talked a lot about some of this stuff, and I think actually giving kind of specific tools or pointing people in specific directions to do this may be helpful. So if we look back at kind of the earlier stuff we were talking about, deep research through ChatGPT, and if you have like the $20 a month subscription, you can get basically more deep research than one individual person will probably use in a month. And so that's one way to do that. In terms of data transformation, again, you can use ChatGPT, you can use Claude by Anthropic, which is very similar, but they have slightly different, personalities, if you will, as far as what they're good at. I think for creative writing or brainstorming, Claude is probably a little bit better than ChatGPT, but both are helpful. In terms of some of the things I was mentioning, you can use Base 44 or Lovable to generate those interactive websites, or even just in Gemini now, Google gives you the ability to use this, what's called Nano Banana image generation, but also Veo is their video version of that. And I believe if you have like a Google business account, even through work, you get access to some amount of Veo credits, just as part of that, so you can kind of use that stuff directly. What are some other maybe specific tools that you're leveraging now, Matt?
Well, even just staying on that, like one thing I want to let everyone know is like we try to give you guys lots of just like fictitious examples of like other industries and verticals that we don't fully understand because we work in software, but to show you how this stuff can work. But one of the things that I think people need to consider is like, what is the model trained on? Okay. Now, most of the models I've been trained on like the entire public history of the internet, right? But then there's also little things. So like, it, there's so many different occupations out there, but like, let's say your occupation, it would be really helpful if you knew that the AI you were using was trained on YouTube, right?
Mhm.
Think about how much great information is on YouTube that's not really written. It's videos of like how to do this, how to do that. I'm sure everyone on this call has used YouTube to like figure out how to assemble furniture or unclog a drain or whatever, right? Well, for example, YouTube is owned by Google. Google's pretty smart. And Google Gemini, which we don't talk about on this podcast that often, is another great thing, just like ChatGPT. And they figured out how to block all the other crawlers from accessing YouTube. Well, there's a wealth of information, as we all know, trillions of hours of amazing information on YouTube. So it depends on what you're trying to do. So as we talk about tools, sometimes it's not just like, oh, there's a chatbot and then there's one for vibe coding and there's one for video. It's also sometimes at the chatbot level. So I want to let everyone know, like, if you think the information that you need or the training that you want the model to have would be really well to do if it was served up by YouTube and trained on YouTube, that's awesome. I forget who has access to Reddit. Didn't Reddit sell their data to someone?
It's a good question. I don't remember either, but yes, I think they're licensing it to one of the providers.
And Reddit, it can be like a very, very horrible place, as we all know, as any message board can be, with trolls and people with just who say hurtful things. However, there's also amazing information on Reddit
Mhm.
where people share anonymously vulnerable information about their health and stuff that can help you in other ways and make you feel less alone, things of that nature. So there's always a good and a bad to these things, but you could even look up using a ChatGPT who's trained on Reddit, because maybe Reddit might help you brainstorm better because people speak vulnerably there. It's not like official publications, etc. So sometimes it's just as simple as ask an AI, have you been trained on this or this or this? And if not, they'll tell you who actually has. And maybe that's where you want the chatbot to pull from. Because if OpenAI is only pulling from, let's say, not Reddit, not Twitter, we know for a fact that Twitter data only trains Grok because X owns X. XAI owns X and Grok is the whatever. If you were like, I mean, Twitter can also be a great place and also be a terrible place. But like, let's say you're a comedian, right? There's a lot of funny things written on Twitter. It's a place where people share memes, all that kind of stuff. You might want to use Grok. So something that we never talked about in this pod that I think is useful for people to know is that, yes, they've all been trained on everything that's like super public. But sometimes companies are really smart and like, you can't train on my stuff, and they have their engineers block it from AIs reading it. And so that only their AI can use it. So that's something that's probably worth sharing with people. Do your digging if you want it to be trained on something more specific.
Yeah. The last use case that I want to talk about is something that, Matt and I keep it real here. We like to be vulnerable with you guys. And so in terms of software development, I do a lot of software dev in my role now. I am not a software dev professionally by my previous history. I am a self-taught software developer. So when I was younger, I took some computer science courses. I taught myself a few different programming languages, and I built like some games and some basic stuff. It was interesting to me. And when I was in college and I was running a research lab, I was writing software for our research experiments because there was a particular programming language that powered all of those, right? But I had never done it professionally. So fast forward to the role that I'm in now, and GitHub is essentially where code repositories are stored. And so companies will host their code in GitHub, and then it'll run in some other things. But there were so many pieces of our technical architecture and workflows that I didn't understand because I hadn't worked professionally with engineers in this capacity in the past. And I needed to get up to speed very quickly. So I used AI to actually help me understand typical GitHub workflows, how to access this feature in GitHub. GitHub has a Copilot built in. So it's kind of an AI tool specifically for that product. So I got in and I was asking it questions about, all right, what is a pull request? How do I clone this code repository? Like, what does this workflow look like? And so I got myself up to speed so that I could speak the same language as the engineers that I was interacting with, and at least get to a solution to the problem faster. And it didn't make me a full-fledged software developer, but it made me dangerous enough And what I do now often is, now that I can at least navigate GitHub and I use, their Copilot and AI to better understand these things, I use Claude Code, or even just Claude in the browser, to understand how code works. So if you were to put me in a room with a computer that didn't have access to the internet and you said, hey, write this program, I would be useless. But what I can do is I can upload code from an application where I know what the application does in terms of the end experience, for our customers. And I actually will have the AI break down the different sections. I'll say, okay, give me a full diagram of how this application works, highlight all the key pieces, like turn it into a one-pager for me. And then when I go to interact with engineering and either give a feature request or ask a question about a bug, I am now armed with knowledge of how this code works, how the application works from like an architectural standpoint, and I have more information to get to an answer faster. So this is a little bit more of an advanced use case, but it's something I find myself using more and more as I am writing code, as I am interacting with our engineers. Is if you're in a tech role where you're in product or you're engineering and product adjacent, and maybe traditionally you've struggled to articulate a bug or a feature or something that you want to better understand, you can actually use GitHub's Copilot and something like Claude to actually start to understand how your software at your company works, so you can have better informed, intelligent discussions with product and engineering. And especially if you work in SaaS or software of any kind, I think that's an incredibly valuable skill to open the door to some of those conversations and actually help you have more impact at your company.
I love that. And it's actually really smart what you've highlighted, because that's unique to you, and you might not think it's relevant to people who aren't in this you're like in this connective tissue role, right? Between like product and sales engineering and eng and stuff like that. But actually what you highlighted is profound, because anyone can use it. So what is Justin really saying at a high level that he's done is he knows that there are domain experts. So, for example, one of my buddies is a project manager for a commercial construction company. He's never been at GC and he's never worked in the field. I'm sure he's handy and stuff. He strikes me as that kind of guy. But he's the project manager. But he might need to communicate with a foreman, right? Or the GC, or the people who pour the foundation that they contract out to build like a strip mall or whatever. And he might, I'm just guessing, he might sometimes feel insecure because that person like literally has been doing that for 30 years, but he needs to communicate this or that. And he wants to come correct first, just like you wanted to come correct with engineers. Any of us, if we have to interface with people who know more about something than us, and we don't want to waste their time, we want to be efficient, we want to be respected, and we want to get to the outcome quickly, use AI to ask questions or take a picture of something and be like, was this foundation ported correctly? Because it feels weird, but maybe, and here's the deal, like this is traditionally a marshy area of this part of the state. By the way, the state I'm in is X, Y, and Z. I don't want to criticize this person because we need them for the next project. What do you think, AI? And the AI might be like, no, it's actually great. And thanks for the context. That's why they poured it with that weird slope, or not. Any of you, if you're working in a business, probably have to communicate with people who have more expertise in an area, but you guys got to play nice in the sandbox, not the dev sandbox, the figurative sandbox. And you can now use this as the great equalizer, and people will appreciate so much that it seems like you're really taking an interest in using their time efficiently. They won't even know how you did it, but any of us can do this. And how I will wrap things up is when Justin first joined the company that we worked at together, he joined in a straight up sales role, not this like technical machete wielding AI innovator that he is today, but he was more on the traditional sales side. And one of the things that I remember that you did really early is we needed something really simple, which is we had all the leads that came into our company get routed by our CRM to the next 8. To make it fair. But sometimes people would just like ping somebody and be like, hey, I want to talk to your company, like a friend of a friend on a text message. And how could we keep track? I don't know if you remember this, but how could we keep track of who's next to get that, so that we don't just like, oh, XYZ will take that call, and then ABC will take that call, AE. But no, we wanted to make that equitable too. Everybody should run through a round robin. And Justin was like, raised his hand, and he's in a normal sales role. And he's like, hey, I can build a Google sheet with Python, and we can load the AE's names in. And all you got to do is press a checkbox next to the AE's name if they got the one that just came in, and then they'll get moved to the bottom and the next person up. And we built like a separate round robin for leads that just come in word of mouth. And then all of a sudden, people were like, well, that was really cool. I heard the word Python, and it works in Google Sheets, and it's solving a real business issue, which is fairness. And then I think that was one of the first times that people realized that, like, wow, this Justin guy, like, he's a problem solver with tech. Now, let me ask you, at Scouts Honor, we didn't talk about this beforehand. Did you AI at all to learn how to write that, or was that just something that you knew how to do?
I knew how to do it theoretically, and but this is what I do so often in my role now is I give AI very clear architecture and instructions of like, this is what I need it to do. These are the guardrails, whatever. And I let the AI generate a lot of the code. And then I reviewed and made sure it worked. And yeah, so it's a collaborative process. Even then, it very much is a collaborative process now when I'm working on software.
That solves such a huge problem at the company, though, because like the good leads are typically like word of mouth, friends of friend leads. So everyone wanted to make sure that the round robin process that was happening from the inbound through the CRM, people clicking on ads saying, I want to take a demo, that was really tight. But everyone was like, how do we make sure the good leads are fair? And you solved that problem with technology and probably a little bit of AI to check your work. And the app worked so well. And everyone was like, wow, awesome. Clearly an innovative person uses technology to do this. And now look at you now, like you're just like the machete wielding AI innovator.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool example that we should share with people, because you all might hear the word Python like Matt and be like, oh, sounds like a snake. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what to do with that. But like next time somebody has a business problem, go talk to AI and see if AI can talk you through how to set it up. I bet it can. And then all of a sudden that could open up new opportunities for you, and or just make people want to give you that next promotion or consider you for a next role, because you're proving that like you are someone who tries to action on and problem solve things. And, prior to these tools being out there, you might not known how. So
yeah,
I hope that this was like really useful for our listeners. Like, just to recap some of the things that we spoke about. One, stop being insecure about the fact that AI can do a lot of the input work that kept you busy. That's true for Justin and me as well. We're not immune to this. It of course is going to make you feel a little, but that's important. That's my important thing. It's like not anymore. It's about the outcomes. So think about the outcomes and then figure out how you can get your company more of the outcomes. If you can get your company more revenue, more customers to renew, customers to get value faster, more construction projects done faster and on budget, they don't care how you get there. So stop thinking about the inputs. We also talked about like using video. Every single occupation out there could benefit from using video, right? We talked about leveling the playing field with the subject matter experts that you have to interact with, or your clients, and role playing or learning about things in their world before you actually speak and communicate with them, and countless other strategies. I think those are just some of the big ones I want to highlight for everybody before they walk away from this. We don't know what the future holds for occupation, but I can tell you one thing. If you try to hold on to the way things were, you are in for a rude awakening.
Yeah.
If you start to just reframe a little bit in your mind and say, what can I get done today that I couldn't before, that gets us closer to the outcome with AI, you are part of the workforce that people are going to be really excited about moving forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually really glad you brought up that story, because I have personally lived the advice that we are giving you all, right? I did not get hired in a technical role. The role that I am in now is a much better fit for me, and it's something that I truly enjoy doing every day. But I followed the exact advice we are giving you all on the last episode and this episode, and that led to me being in this position. And so, if you feel nervous or if you feel stuck in your current position, embrace some of these tools, try to play around with it. And I promise you that leveraging this will make you more impactful, will lead to more opportunities, because if you're the go-getter and the problem solver, your job's not getting replaced. And this stuff allows you to be that person. Matt and I could probably talk about this stuff all day. Maybe there'll be a part 3 in the future. But again, we really hope that this 2-part series on the future of work has been helpful. And thank you all who are tuning in, listening, commenting, following. We appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks, everyone.